About time for another Coach Life. I was having a build with Sis this morning about, we were talking about New York City, Virginia, the difference, but essentially she brought up that it's the time of revelations. She was like, I don't rock with the Bible too tough, but it's so hard to read. Like, first you had to be literate, so that's one barrier, and then you have to have she said, like a poetic consciousness. You have to know. And I was like, because you have to know metaphors, you have to know when something is said, it doesn't mean, it's not literal. So I was like, oh, you gotta be literate in two ways, essentially. But then we started to talk about it being the time of revelations, as many cultures predicted. And I said, feels like it. All that means is things that are uncomfortable or hidden or buried for whatever reason, they're being revealed. So our true nature is being revealed. If you think back to New Year's Eve, the feeling was not, I've never felt a New Year's like this one. It was more so people were just over it. They weren't exactly optimistic for a new year. Or maybe the energy that I did see that was kind of gung-ho about it was definitely a force. In other words, it didn't come from some truly organic source. It was like, I'm gonna push through, which is fine. That's what I'm doing, I'm pushing through. But I'm also honest about where it's coming from. See, for me, I started a lot of things that I would like to see finished. And the only way for me to do that properly is to be hands-on, to be in it, so that I can know what's really going on, so I can feel the pulse of the activity. Which reminds me, I gotta send some bread to youngin' who's going to Africa. So fire. But note to self. So yeah, the time of things being revealed, hard truths, uncomfortable truths. In public education, we have a lot to come to terms with, especially once that COVID budget dries up and we get back to operating at a bare bones structure, which is unfortunately the norm. Things are going to change. It'll be not the easiest transition, but it'll be healthy in the long run. So the revelations aspect of this all is more so about, look at it just for yourself, right? Just as an individual. Why did I really pour these cashews? Like I'm gonna sit here chomping on cashews. Sometimes you live, sometimes you learn, sometimes you just live. To be fair, I put most of them over there. So, I have a good example for you. Let's say I always thought Frank was my father. Grew up with Frank as my father. Father's Day, today's my father's birthday. I gotta holler at him. Note to self. Let's say I thought Frank was my father all my life. Took me to games, yada, yada, yada. Love my moms. And my mom's and Frank sit me down one day with some stranger. And they're like, I could tell, like, the stranger, like, I'm like, yo, what's something feels, I feel something. And they sit me down, they're like, little JJ, we got something that we need to tell you. Frank is not your actual father. He loves you just the same. But Billy Joe Bob is your dad. Billy Joe Bob over there looking just like you. Blink the same way. So you're like, oh, okay. What do you do with that? You know, what's tomorrow look like? What's the next day? Are we supposed to bond? Can we rebuild what has been lost over all that time? That's what Revelations feels like. Now, to be a full adult and to have these revelations might be more painful. Might be. As a kid, you could recover, you know. We went through the pandemic. We got to see that nobody's really in charge properly, although I'm very grateful for what we had in terms of infrastructure. It was just very clear from a youthful perspective. It was very clear that we needed to create the world we wanted to see, because the one that we live in was created for a different time. They didn't necessarily anticipate the internet and Instagram and TikTok and quantum physics in our front pockets. So being that we're in the time of revelations, it's nice to have places to land and to talk things through. But in order for us to talk, we need time. We need space and time to talk. Not a lecture, a dialogue, a conversation. There's certain topics that people love to talk about. We could talk forever about race relations in America and this, that, and the third, but when do we talk about, well, I'll just say where we make interesting selections when it comes to what we choose to talk about and what we choose not to talk about. So, Revelations, Coach Life.